Jayam Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parivrajacharya, Ashtotara Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parivrajacharya, Ashtotara Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. New Dwarka Dham Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, entitled The Status Quo. And we're on chapter... What's the chapter? Chapter 1, text number 22. Okay, I'll chant it myself and then I'll do the, then we'll read the next one. All right, so this is Chapter 1, questions by Vidura, and text 22. So I'll just read the Sanskrit and the English, and then we'll do 23 together. Tasyam titasyo shanaso manoscha pritor atagnir asitasya vayo tirtam sudasasya gavam guhasya yadscha the devyasya Asisheve. Translation. On the bank of the river Saraswati, there were 11 places of pilgrimage, namely 1 Chitta, 2 Ushana, 3 Manu, 4 Prithu, 5 Agni, 6 Asita, 7 Vayu, 8 Sudasa, 9 Go, 10 Guha, and 11 Shadadev. Vidura visited all of them and duly performed rituals. Okay, so now 23. So if everybody could please repeat after me. Anyani Cheha Dvija Deva Devai Kirtani Nanayata Nani Vishnoho Pratyanga Mukyankita Mandirani Yad Darshanat Krishnam Anusmaranti Anyani Cheha Dvija Deva Devai Kirtani Nanayata Nani Vishnu Pratyanga Mukyankita Mandirani Yadarshanat Krishnam Anusmaranti Anyani Cheha Dvija Deva Devai Kirtani Nanayata Nani Vishnu Pratyanga Mukyankita Mandirani Yadarshanat Krishnam Anusmaranti Anyani Cheha Dvijadeva Devai Kirtani Nanayata Nani Vishnu Pratyangamukyankita Mandirani Yadarshanat Krishnam Anusmaranti Vaishnavis like that. Okay, word by word. Anyani, others. Cha, also. Iha, here. Dvijadeva, by the great sages. Devai, and the demigods. Kritani, established by. Nana, various. Ayatanani, various forms. Vishnu, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prati, each and every. Anga, part. Mukya, the chief. Ankita, marked. Mandirani, temples. Yat, which. Darshanat, by seeing from a distance. Krishnam, the original personality of Godhead. Anusmaranti, constantly remembers. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There were also many other temples of various forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, established by great sages and demigods. These temples were marked with the chief emblems of the Lord, and they reminded one always of the original personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Purport. Human society is divided into 4 social orders of life and 4 spiritual divisions, applying to each and every individual person. This system is called Varnashram Dharma, and has already been discussed in many places in this great literature. The sages, or persons who completely devoted themselves to the spiritual upliftment of the entire human society, were known as Dvijadeva, the best amongst the twice-born. The denizens of superior planets, from the moon planet and upwards, were known as Devas. Both the Dvijadevas and the Devas always established temples of Lord Vishnu in his various forms, such as Govinda, Madhusudana, Nrsimha, Madhava, Keshava, Narayan, Padma, Nabha, Parthasarthi, and many others. The Lord expands himself in innumerable forms, but all of them are non-different from one another. Lord Vishnu has 4 hands, and each hand holds a particular item, either a conch shell, will, club, or lotus flower. Of these 4 emblems, the chakra or will is the chief. Lord Krishna, being the original Vishnu form, has only one emblem, namely the will, and therefore he is sometimes called the Chakri. The Lord's chakra is the symbol of the power by which the Lord controls the whole manifestation. The tops of Vishnu temples are marked with the symbol of the will, so that people may have the chance to see the symbol from a very long distance and at once remember Lord Krishna. The purpose of building very high temples is to give people a chance to see them from a distant place. This system is carried on in India whenever a new temple is constructed, and it appears that it is coming down from a time before recorded history. The foolish propaganda by atheists that temples were constructed only in later days is refuted here, because Vidura visited these temples at least 5,000 years ago, and the temples of Vishnu were in existence long before Vidura visited them. The great sages and demigods never established statues of men or demigods, but they established temples of Vishnu for the benefit of common men, to raise them to the platform of God consciousness. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Lanmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukham Karitavachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diritaranam Vancha Kalpadribhishcha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read this verse one more time. There were also many other temples of various forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, established by great sages and demigods. These temples were marked with the chief emblems of the Lord, and they reminded one always of the original personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada, he worked tirelessly, very hard, to help people, people become Krishna conscious. Just like in this purport, it's mentioned that the great sages and the demigods, they established temples. And the purpose of establishing those temples were to help people come to the platform of God consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada, in the same mood, he worked tirelessly to establish temples all over the world. which he successfully did. And he wanted that his disciples and that his grand-disciples also work tirelessly to establish temples and to maintain temples and to spread Krishna consciousness. And some people sometimes they criticize religious people for doing this, establishing big temples. They say you could be doing so many other things with the money, helping people in so many other ways. Why are you establishing these big temples? And Srila Prabhupada was asked one time this question at one of the pandals in India, the big programs where thousands of people were coming daily to hear him speak. So, a person asked him, why have you made such a big arrangement? So much money was spent, so many people are invited. Why did you make such a big arrangement? And Srila Prabhupada said that we've made this big arrangement just so people could get the chance to hear about Krishna. So that's the idea, to give people a chance to hear about Krishna. And of course, it's said that we can never repay Srila Prabhupada, we can never repay the spiritual master, but one time also Srila Prabhupada was asked about this idea of repaying the spiritual master. Because generally, if we're given something, or if we're grateful people, then we want to repay them, whoever gave us whatever it may be. So naturally, devotees want to repay Srila Prabhupada, naturally devotees want to repay their spiritual master. So he was asked, how do we repay you? So Srila Prabhupada said, well, you can't repay the spiritual master. But if you want to try to repay the spiritual master, then you could preach vigorously. And interesting what he said you could preach vigorously just like me. It's quite interesting. He said that. So preaching doesn't necessarily just mean one has to travel over the world, and it could mean that, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean that. Just like in Kolkata, when His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami was speaking to His Holiness Giraj Swami one time in the early days, Tamal Krishna Goswami was saying to Giraj Swami that Shama Sundar Prabhu, Shama Sundar Prabhu disciple, chasing rhinos with the Swami. So Tamal Krishna Goswami was saying, Shama Sundar Prabhu, he's one of the greatest preachers in ISKCON. And then Giraj Swami was thinking, oh, how is that? Because I don't even remember seeing him ever give a class. And then Tamal Krishna Goswami said, well, preaching doesn't just mean giving classes, it means making arrangements for people so that they could come in contact with the temple, with hearing about Krishna, the Krishna conscious movement. So, for example, Shama Sundar Prabhu was making these amazing arrangements to advertise the Pandal, right, and Mumbai. So this huge blimp, right, Hare Krishna. And he was inviting so many people, right, heavy propaganda from him. But he was in the background. But there's a lot going on, under his organization. So we see that also Srila Prabhupada, in relation to this and to spreading Krishna consciousness, establishing temples, giving people a chance to hear about Krishna, he said himself, he said, my disease is that I can't think small, I think big. That's what he said his disease was. So similarly, being followers of Srila Prabhupada, we should also think big. In the sense that, for example, recently, I'm sure most or maybe all of you have heard, but there's this devotee in Atlanta, Mahotsaha. Mahotsaha means great enthusiasm, so he's quite enthusiastic. But Mahotsaha, he broke the world record in distributing books of 1,100 in one day. I think it was 1,400 or 1,100. So he was, he distributes stacks to people. and distributed some Bhagavatam sets and so on. But 1,100, I mean, that's a lot of books. And he, because naturally you're curious how much Lakshmi was collected. And also sometimes devotees, they come, specifically sometimes new devotees come and they say, oh, this sounds kind of mundane, why are we reading the Lakshmi? But actually Srila Prabhupada, I believe it was here in Los Angeles, when the devotees would go out on Sankirtan, Tamal Krishna Goswami would come back and Prabhupada would say how many books and how much Lakshmi. So it's coming from Prabhupada. So yeah, 1,100 books, I believe, and $10,000. It's like a lot. That's a lot. So that was, previously it was Harinamananda Prabhu who distributed a little less than that, who had the world record, but now it's Mahotsaha. But part of this, being able to achieve this Mahotsaha, he actually had it in his mind. He's saying, I want to break that record. Of course, there's other reasons why he was successful as well. But anyways, he had it in his mind. So this principle of thinking big is important, actually. 1,484. Okay. Thank you. That's a lot. So this principle also, practically speaking, under Harikesh Swami at the time, Harinamananda was his disciple, and Navina Nirda. But one tactic, you could say, of Harikesh was that he went to a particular temple, and then at the temple everyone was walking around and saying, oh, we can't do it, very negative. It's so difficult to distribute books, right? And then he said he went on a campaign, and he started going around the temple. He said, we can do it, we are going to distribute books, it is possible. And he gathered a few devotees to help him. And then he said after that, of course many other things, but that was part of it. After that, it started increasing, and really increased all over there. So they became some of the biggest book distributors in ISKCON history. So Srila Prabhupada, he also thought big and endeavored in that way, in a very humble way, praying to Krishna, depending on Krishna. So, and Srila Prabhupada, you could see that he had this special vision that, with all due respect, at the particular time, his contemporaries they didn't have that. But Srila Prabhupada had that vision. And therefore he endeavored and depended on Krishna and his spiritual master and was successful. For example, in terms of Srila Prabhupada having this vision, he was in New York in the early days, and he was talking to some train conductor. And then he started saying, it's in the Lilamrita, but he started saying to this man that, yes, I have temples all over the world, I have students all over the world, I have deities all over the world. But at that particular time, externally speaking, from a mundane vision, he didn't have that. But he had that vision, and therefore, So to be a follower of Srila Prabhupada means, to think big, and then also to have such visions. Now, some may say, I'm not really like that. That's not my nature. So that may be okay. Then we should cooperate with those who have those big plans and desires and visions to spread Krishna consciousness. We can cooperate with them. So the here it's mentioning about again in the purport about establishing deities, people going to see the deities as a way to raise people to the platform of Krishna consciousness, common men to the platform of Krishna consciousness, common people to the platform of Krishna consciousness. So deity worship is extremely important. It's not just meant for neophytes. Sometimes that may be a mistaken idea that okay, it's just for neophytes. The real activity is preaching, but deity worship is extremely important. Or else, why would Srila Prabhupada establish deities all over the world? Now, of course, it is said in Shastra, the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that somebody not on higher levels of Krishna consciousness, all they see is the deity. They can't see Krishna in anybody else. They can't see Krishna outside of the temple. But even though that's there, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he requested the 6 Goswamis to establish deities with temples, and also so many of our acharyas, our teachers on the line, they all had personal deities, so many of them. And actually, Srila Rupa Goswami, he explains in the Nectar of Devotion that there's 5 most potent forms of devotional service. So one is hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, residing in a holy place, chanting the holy name, associating with devotees, and deity worship. The 5 most potent forms of devotional service. And he says that even just a slight attachment to any one of these can awaken love of God even in a beginner. He says that. So, and Srila Prabhupada being expert, he designed the morning program to include all of these. We're in a holy place outside of Los Angeles. Right? We're here, New Dwarka Dham, it's a holy place. We're worshiping the deities. It's part of the morning program. We are chanting the holy name. What else? Associating with devotees. Yeah, and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So it has them all. And it's in the association of devotees. So the more we could do these activities in the association of the devotees, the more powerful it is. For example, His Holiness Giraj Swami one time said that he was chanting Gayatri in the Yamuna in Vrindavan. And next to him was Bhakti Bringa Govinda Swami, also chanting Gayatri. So Giraj Swami said he's there, he's chanting Gayatri, and that particular Gayatri is extremely powerful. He's feeling a lot of mercy, that Gayatri in the Yamuna. So he's chanting, and his eyes are closed. Right? A lot of devotees close their eyes when chanting Gayatri, but his eyes are closed. And then all of a sudden he notices that his meditation doesn't break completely, but the power of it reduces. So then he was wondering why. Oh, why is that? So then he opens his eyes, and then he looks over, and then he sees Bibi Govinda Swami walking out of Yamuna River. And then he concluded that in the association of Bhakti Bringa Govinda Swami, he was experiencing, more mercy, the ability to, really enter into the Gayatri mantras. So the devotees, the association of the devotees, it enhances these 5 most potent forms of devotional service. It enhances it. And actually, without associating with devotees, or what to speak of associating with non-devotees in relation to these 5 most potent forms of devotional service. Like Prabhupada says about chanting the holy name, he says, quoting Sanatana Goswami, says, milk touched by the lips of a serpent has poisonous effects. So, whether it's the Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhajanarayan Swami, he says that he was with the Chutananda Prabhu there in India. He says that there was one big Bhagavat Katha, speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7-day, right? They do that. And he said that the man was there on the stage and he started to cry, right, in ecstasy. So then he left the stage, and then Achyutananda said that the man, after crying, he got off stage and then he kind of like blew his nose, and out came some chilies, some little green chilies, so he kind of, put the chilies in. So yeah, it doesn't have whether it's the chanting or the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam or prasadam, right? Actually, without devotees, there's no prasadam. We have to, or the deity worship. I was hearing recently from somebody that in Fiji there's a big temple, of Lakshmi Narayan, and in that temple, their deity worship wasn't up to standard, to say the least. So the devotees asked about the deity worship. Oh, how often do you change the deity's clothes? And then the man said, oh, we change once a year. It's like really bad. It's sad, actually, but once a year. And then the devotee asked, oh, why do you do that? And then the man said, well, because if we change more than once a year, if we change regularly, we're going to have to start offering food regularly. They didn't want to do that. And then he said, if we start offering food regularly, then we know that Krishna doesn't accept, onions and garlic. So that means we have to give up onions and garlic. So we don't want to do that. Anyways. Very strange. So yeah, so you can see how the processes of devotional service, deity worship, chanting the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with devotees. Devotees make a holy place holy. Just like in Radhakund, this is the most holy place in the universe, right? But one time, it's in the Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava, this book by His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami, but in that book, the biography, this book about Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there's a recollection there where one devotee, he is encouraging Gorgashodas Babaji to go to Radhakund, to live there. And interesting enough, Gorgashodas Babaji said, I'm not going there. And he said, until Radhakund could be, until 12 despicable men leave there, I'm not going to go there. It means there was these fake Babajis there. So the devotees make holy place holy. It means they keep the sanctity of it. Through the chanting of Krishna's glories, through the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, they keep the sanctity of it. So Srila Prabhupada, he wanted us to engage in these 5 most important forms of devotional service every day, like through the morning program, and in this way develop or reawaken our natural love for Krishna, which should become spontaneous. For example, just concluding here, there's different motivations of people in religion. Some people out of fear, right? Oh, I better do it because I'm going to get bad karma, or I'm going to, bad next life or something like that. So that's a lowest level. I guess it's better than not doing it at all. The next level is duty. Okay, I don't feel like it, but I know it's good for me, so let me do it. But then there's the level of of just spontaneous attraction, or you could say real attraction or real love, in which one doesn't have to be forced. It's not that the temple president or the temple commander has to say, okay, here, get up and come see the deities. There's no force, it just automatically one will go see the deities. And there's no external force, means no one has to tell us to. And also internal. It's not that there's an internal conversation. Oh, should I go? Should I not go? I don't really feel like it. There's just no conversation. Just go because there's that attraction there. So through taking advantage in a good way of what Srila Prabhupada gave us, Dvija Deva, the sages, the demigods, Srila Prabhupada, what he gave us, the temples, we can awaken. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Saddhikava Noy Shravanada Shuddha Chitta Kori Doit. By hearing and chanting about Krishna, this naturally awakens love for Krishna. Okay, so does anybody have any questions or comments? Yes, Jutakarma Prabhu.
Thank you, Balaram.
Thank you.
For the nice class and also for nice preaching you're doing in San Diego with Krishna Lounge and all those things.
Thank you.
My comment was that yes, Srila Prabhupada had a big vision. He thought big. But whatever it is that Krishna had given him at any particular point in time, he was very attentive to, and he managed everything, whether it was money or devotees or property. He managed it very carefully and made it the foundation for the expansion to the bigger things he had in mind. In other words, his visions weren't of thinking big, weren't impractical.
Yes.
Oh, if I had $10 million, I can... No, whatever he had, he took it as Krishna's mercy, carefully developed it, and expanded from there.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, he, just like Sudama Brahman in the Krishna book, he was given so much because he could handle it. So Srila Prabhupada also, as Jutakarma Prabhu was saying, he accepted a lot, but he perfectly utilized it. So, yes, such.
Thank you, Prabhu. I have some reflection of the class.
Okay.
And at one point you were mentioning that, if somebody cannot do or support the, let's say, the Sankirtan in book distribution or something, that at least we should assist.
Yes.
And then a thought came to my mind that Srila Prabhupada, when he was trying to establish his Krishna consciousness at the beginning, he was asking for that help. And they had the same guru, the same kind of goal meeting, but somehow or other, he didn't get that help.
Yes.
So would that be because of, sometimes devotees, they have a different, sometimes they might see it's a different project. Oh, that's not me, it's not my temple. Is somebody else going to do some project, and then he needs help. He's always asking people, can you help me? Well, I have my project here, and it may appear that they're not working together or supporting. And the same thing I thought about when you were talking about, going out and preaching, but what happens, somebody, might be a pujari, which is a good service you mentioned, really important. So the tendency may appear to be that same thing for them, they just focus in their service, and apparently might be that they're not directly supporting.
Yeah, that's an important part, because actually the deities in every temple, they give life to the Sankirtan devotees. They give life to the preachers. They give life to everybody. And so therefore the devotees who are worshiping the deities means as their main service, dressing them, cooking offerings and so on. It's very important service. I mean, Srila Prabhupada in the last years, I think it was 1977, he said about the pujari, he said, "Oh, this is the most fortunate position." He said that. So yeah.
There was just one more extra thing that As you were mentioning about, we were hearing in the Bhagavatam about the different temples and tirthas, and a thought also came to my mind that Vidura himself was glorified by Yudhishthira Maharaj, where he says, Tirti kurvanti tirtani swatastena gadavritat. My dear Lord, you are a wholly personified. In other words, the devotees, you carry the Lord within you, so you're a temple.
Yeah.
So then I thought that if we devotees get in that mood or that inspired like that, and we can also have the same potency, we can have a big impact in our preaching, because you personify holy place, you personify, all the good qualities there. And that can be also another temple walking.
Yes. Purity is the force. Right. All right, Maharaj. Yes, yeah, you could.
Thank you for a very nice class,
Thank you.
Balarama
Thank you.
Prabhu. I just had one little point on the point that you made at the beginning of the class, and that is we should think big. Thinking big is very good, but who are we thinking big for? Are we thinking big for ourselves, for our own glory, our own honor, our own acknowledgement, the applause that we get from devotees, the talk that people give about us? Is this what we want? Or do we want to think big for the pleasure of Krishna, for the pleasure of his devotees, to the pleasure of our spiritual master? Are we the object of that bigness, or is God and Guru and all the devotees the object? If it is the latter, then it is a very good motivation, because basically we are helping so many people by receiving, for example, so many books.
Yeah.
And we are not in any way thinking that we are the doers, because we're thinking that this is being done by the grace of God. Otherwise, I could not do it. By the grace of Guru. When you do it for Guru's pleasure, then it's by the grace of Guru that it's being done. But we have to divorce ourselves from the results. As soon as we think I, me, mine, we're in trouble. So we have to ask that question. We can't just assume that everything I do is for God and Guru. Better to think the other way and then correct what is wrong.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the standard. Thank you. Yes, Subhas Prabhu.
Jai Balaram,
Yeah,
thank you for a wonderful class.
Thank you.
Nice. I really appreciated the fact that you mentioned about deity worship. And, in different places and in many occasions, Prabhupada gave us the understanding that there's no difference between Krishna himself and the Archa Vigraha form of the deity of Krishna. They actually have the same potency. And we can only understand that by getting involved in those 5 important activities of devotional service. And I thought that was very, very, very nice of you to mention that. And another thing is that, sometimes we forget that, we're in front of the deities, and we forget who the deities are. And I think this is a very important point to bring up in terms, especially like now in the class, we're talking about it. So we should all try to be very conscientious that who we're actually dealing with here. And then when we're in the temple room, how are we thinking and how are we conversing with each other? Sometimes we make it a social event to be in the temple room and we discuss business and things of that nature. And when bringing that up, you just reminded me how important it is, to understand that this Archa form is actually the same potency of the Supreme Lord himself. And when we chant our rounds, when we come to the program, we should be enthusiastic, as you're mentioning, and on our own accord. Because if we realize that Krishna is here in this particular form and that this form has a potency, we'd come to get that blessing, to get that mercy of the Lord. I just can't remember exactly the details, but there was a situation, a pastime with Srila Prabhupada with Rukmini and Dwarkadish, where he wanted to go to India, but he said to Rukmini Dwarkadish, you wouldn't let me go. He was like having this kind of conversation. And that's just a prime example within our lifetime that we can, see an example of that particular type of exchange. What to speak of people like Vidura and different great souls that understand that Krishna is there in that particular form.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Just to add more to what Savas Prabhu was saying, it's in Lilamrita actually. Srila Prabhupada, he was doing very well here, so he didn't want to go back to India. And then Rukmini Dwarkadish were telling him that you have to go to India. And he was like, I don't want to go. And then Rukmini Dwarkadish said that I will give you a temple there. And that's how the Krishna Balaram temple started.
Yeah. Yeah, Prabhupada, because devotees would ask Srila Prabhupada, oh, what do you pray for when you go before the deities? And he said, I'm praying to Srimati Radharani that I don't fall down. And then devotees said, oh, Prabhupada, you can't fall down. I mean, you're a pure devotee. And then Srila Prabhupada said, yeah, I can't fall down because I'm always praying. I'm always praying that please protect me. So that's a good point for me. Yes.
Also, I hear statement that when Pujari, when they worship deities, and when deities is satisfied with that service, when Krishna is satisfied, everybody else is satisfied. So by potency of empower Krishna, he empower other, servitors, direct preachers, sannyasis, and book distributors.
Yeah.
So there's already everything is connected. This statement.
Yeah, the deity should be the center of every community. I mean, every community who has deities should be the center of the community. We hold festivals for the pleasure of the deities. We read the Sankirtan scores. Everything we're doing should be the center. So it's an important thing to know. I mean, that's what Srila Prabhupada wanted. Krishna's the center, right? So, Prabhupada. Okay. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai.